Think of yourself as driving on this highway, a desolate highway, and you've been driving for hours and you're hungry and you're tired, and all of a sudden you see this golden yellow arches of your favorite burger chain. Do you think you have an option at that time?
Let's take this customer journey forward. Let's say inevitably I have clicked on that button and I have bought an item. So what happens next?
A huge caveat here, I'm not implying any causation or attributing good or bad to anything. What I'm trying to say is that there are ideas that shaped how we produce and consume.
In this case, end-of-life management is not just an afterthought. It's integrated in the product design. So Abhi, today's conversation might get a bit philosophical. I want to talk about why do we consume so much? Why do we constantly want stuff? I want to be happy with less, but how do I get there? And I'm looking at your shoes right now, and I'm wondering why you felt the need to buy another pair of yellow shoes when you have a very similar one. And yellow stands out, so I remember.
These are not new shoes, Chitra. It's the same old pair that I've had forever. And please do not drag me into your world of guilt over excessive consumption. I barely own anything. I don't own a house. I don't own a car. My wardrobe is pretty limited. And of course, I think concern for environment is one of the reasons, but it's not the only reason. For instance, I do think possessions limit freedom. And I love my low asset, low consumption lifestyle. But what's driving your angst behind excessive consumption?
Well, frankly, when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of money to go buying stuff. And there weren't that many options also out there. But once I started making more money, things did change a bit. I moved into a new house and I wanted everything new to go with it, like new furniture, new curtains, and just about everything new. But here's the thing, buying all this new stuff didn't give me as much happiness as I thought it would. So, well, I was kind of forced to recalibrate. And all this buying, discarding, and buying more stuff, it just didn't feel right to me. And also, well, it's just irresponsible and unsustainable for the planet as well. Yeah. And you know what? I have a less cluttered house now. And I also have a cleaner conscience. But I'll be honest with you, the need to buy more and consume more, it does pop up frequently and I have to keep quashing it.
Yeah, there are all sorts of reasons why we want to consume things and buy things, right? We might want to buy things because, we simply just need them. You might want to buy stuff because what we consume may signal something about us to others, for example, our societal status. Or we might want to consume things just plain out of habit. There are all sorts of reasons driving this urge. What's yours?
I think I just get bored of all the old stuff and I want the excitement of the new. But having said that, I don't think I'm greedy.
Yeah, I didn't imply that. In fact, many years ago when I was in business school, I would go around quoting this line from this Hollywood movie, Wall Street, in which the character Gordon Gekko goes and says, greed, for the lack of better word, is good. And at that point, like many others around me, I mistakenly thought that this quote is based on something Adam Smith had said many years earlier. But what I did not know at that point is that's not at all what Adam Smith, the earliest champion of free market, had said.
So then what did he say?
So Adam Smith published arguably his greatest work, The Wealth of Nations, in the year 1776. And in that, amongst a lot of other things, he did say something to the effect that self-interest of individuals can be beneficial for the market economy. But that is far from being an endorsement of greed, right? In fact, many years prior to The Wealth of Nations, he had published another book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, in which he emphasized on the importance of sympathy in human behavior.
So what you are saying is that the father of capitalism and free market did not endorse excessive consumption and greed.
100%, exactly.
So So that's a fantastic piece of information, but it doesn't really solve my mundane challenges. When I open my Facebook or my Insta, I can't help but click on all the ads and reels of electronics, clothes, and anything that I was browsing on earlier. One almost feels drawn to these sites, and you end up making an impulsive purchase a lot of times. The allure is so strong that not buying really doesn't seem like an option a lot of times, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean because internet has brought this nudging process right to our living rooms or even bedrooms, right? The data around our habits and preferences is readily available. The colors that we are shown, the layouts that we are shown, everything is down to a science at this point. And on top of that, you have this ease of buying, right? At the click of a button, right at your doorstep. So it's not surprising that it's so difficult to overcome that urge of making a purchase. One analogy that comes to my mind is think of yourself as driving on this highway, a desolate highway, and you've been driving for hours and you're hungry and you're tired, and all of a sudden you see this golden yellow arches of your favorite burger chain. Do you think you have an option at that time?
Not really. I'll definitely end up buying that burger.
Exactly. I think the point is that the fate is sealed at that point. And in the example of your late night purchase, I think internet is the highway that you're traveling on. And the colors, the layouts, the price discounts, the ads, these are all the golden yellow arches that you're seeing.
So let's take this customer journey forward. Let's say inevitably I have clicked on that button and I have bought an item. So what happens next?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about the customer journey. But I would like to caveat by saying that there are many different paths that customers might take. This is just one of them, but it is a fairly common path and one that has a significant impact, right? So with that clear, okay, let's say that you made the purchase of one of those, newer earphones that go into the ears and come in their own charging device, right? Whatever you call them. And then you use it for a year, and let's say it breaks down. So you go online and you find that theoretically your earphones can be repaired. So you go to the nearby repair shop. But the repair person at the shop tells you that your earphones and that charging box, they are completely sealed, almost like black boxes. So the only option you have at that point is to dispose of the earphones and buy a new pair.
So planned obsolescence has been there like forever. It means that a product is designed in such a way that it breaks down sooner than it possibly should or could. So our old devices will become obsolete sooner and we will end up buying the latest versions sooner. And interestingly, this practice goes back more than a century. If you Google planned obsolescence, the most prominent example that pops up in history is that of the incandescent light bulb. So about 100 years ago, the light bulb was, it could last for up to 2,500 hours. It was then brought down and the lifespan was standardized to about 1,000 hours. Going back to our customer journey, I had bought this product and I wanted to use it for a longer time. But despite my best intentions, planned obsolescence and the difficulty to repair my device made me get rid of it. So what happens then?
I would say that you'd probably think that as long as you drop your earphones in the right bin and at the right location, your earphones could probably be recycled or refurbished. So you'd think that, okay, it's not that bad for the environment. But you might be mistaken in thinking so. The earphones that we're talking about are an example of what we call electronic waste or e-waste. And in 2022, the world produced around 62 billion kilograms of e-waste. Now, close to 22% of this ended up as residual waste, with the majority of it going to landfills. And approximately 29% was handled in low to medium income countries by the informal sector, which typically lacks access to advanced and even necessary e-waste management infrastructure. So, a lot of different things are happening here. One, the unsafe handling of this e-waste, by this informal sector that we're talking about, it exposes these people to an enormous amount of risk. And that is because of the chemical and elemental composition of these electronics. Open air burning and acid baths are used to extract valuable materials from these electronics. Now, these release toxic pollutants into the air. When these e-waste reach landfills, these toxic pollutants reach the soil as well as groundwater. So you have your air, water, land, everything being contaminated, and everybody that comes in contact with this is at risk. Now, one more thing is that natural resources such as minerals go into the making of these electronics. So the more we waste these electronics, the more we have to go back and obtain these materials from the earth, obtain virgin materials, right? Which is not good for a planet. And then on top of all this, throughout this journey of this electronic, from the time mining happens to the time they end up at the landfill, unfortunately, greenhouse gases are being emitted, which add to the climate change problem.
It's the same for plastics. The common notion is that plastics can be recycled, and so it's okay for the environment. But less than 10% of all plastic produced till date has been recycled. So what that means is around 6.3 billion tons of plastic is out there in the environment, contaminating it. And to it, additionally, every year, we are adding around 400 million tons of plastic waste. So all this plastic waste is going to stay in the environment for a long time. Now, this waste will break down, it does break down actually into very tiny particles called microplastics. Mm-hmm. And microplastics are going to be contaminating our environment and our water systems. They are extremely harmful for us. Mm-hmm. And we are taking this into our bodies, for example, through the air that we breathe and the food that we eat. And another thing really is that we tend to forget that plastics are basically a fossil fuel product. And so they're associated with a significant amount of greenhouse gas emissions as well.
Yeah. Look at textiles, right? The rate at which new collections are launched and the SKUs churn is mind-boggling. I buy new clothes, so I discard my old clothes. And I donate some of these old clothes thinking that they would go to the needy. But the route that a lot of these discarded clothes take is actually very interesting. Let's talk about one common route that a lot of discarded clothes or donated clothes take in a lot of the developed world. People donate clothes to charity organizations at times, and these organizations sell a portion of the clothes to raise money for the various causes that they're working on. But a lot of times, the remaining clothes are sold to these aggregators who then sell bales of these clothes to importers in various countries such as Ghana. And according to a statistic in one of the articles in The Guardian, I think, it said that Ghana imports around 15 million pieces of secondhand clothing every single week. Wow. And no prizes for guessing where a lot of this ends up. A lot of it goes to the landfills, gets burned, or even trashed around water bodies.
So one theme cuts across all these wastes: the disproportionate and the unfair environmental and health impact that is often shifted to the more vulnerable in the less income economies. Whether it is through the shipment of old clothes or through the uncontrolled and undocumented transboundary movement of electronic waste. Mm-hmm. So getting back to our customer journey, I bought this product and I used it for a much shorter duration than I would have liked. I thought I was recycling or refurbishing it, but unknowingly its disposal was actually causing more harm to the environment and us. So what do I do next?
I would imagine that you will pull out your phone and start browsing for a new pair of earphones. You'd probably look at the same brand or a different brand out there. But because I'm a fairly optimistic person and you're a very savvy person, I would imagine maybe you will start looking at the environmental footprint of the brands that you're interested in. You might even pull up their annual environmental report and try to make an informed decision, an informed choice about your next purchase.
Well, Abhi, I'm sorry, that's highly unlikely. But there is a whole lot of organizations along a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum are these organizations that have sustainability at the center of their business models and who disclose it and let customers make informed choices. Whereas on the other end, we have organizations whose products come packaged in plastic with very obscure end of life disposal guidelines printed on them. And then there is the excessive use of the word green and the use of the beloved three arrow recycle symbol when when actually their products are their packaging is very difficult to recycle.
Yeah. Yeah, Patagonia is one brand that is extremely sustainability focused, and I'm a big fan of them. They sell outdoor gears and clothing, etc. And if you go to their website, the first words that you see on the top are something around the lines that Earth is now our only shareholder. And I love that. Also because these words are backed by credible action. The last I checked, I think around 100% of their voting stocks had been transferred to a trust aimed at preserving the organization's values, and 100% of their non-voting stocks have been transferred to a non-profit, which aims to fight the environmental crisis and defend nature.
Wow. So I think now we need to answer some important questions. The first is, how did we get to this point where we consume so much? Mm-hmm. Second, I think would be, how do we deal with this problem? And the third is, as individuals, what can we do about it?
Well, they're extremely loaded questions, and I'm not sure how we reached here. But I do think that there are certain pivotal moments and ideas in history that shaped things for a long time to come. A huge caveat here, I'm not implying any causation or attributing good or bad to anything. What I'm trying to say is that there are ideas that shaped how we produce and consume. So I think post-World War II, the world adopted an approach of production via use of tech and science as a means to peace and prosperity. Now, a lot of this production comes from businesses. So the purpose of businesses becomes important. Why do businesses exist? Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize-winning economist and one of the intellectual leaders of the Chicago School of Economics, came out with his shareholder theory in, I think, close to 1970. And according to the shareholder theory, the primary social responsibility of businesses is to maximize shareholder profit, of course, within the boundaries of laws and ethical customs. And it says that the broader social responsibility should be left to governments and individuals.
So shareholders of businesses were being prioritized for a long time, while the social, environmental, and the economic impact on other stakeholders like communities, employees, suppliers, etc., weren't really at the center. But a shift has been happening towards the stakeholder approach, and businesses are increasingly committing themselves to stakeholders beyond their shareholders. And I think also that this compliance and the regulatory requirements are promoting a greater transparency of impacts through sustainability reporting.
Yeah, that's right. And that makes a lot of sense, right? A better planet and better communities translate to better business in the longer run. On top of that, we have the fact that a focus on sustainability is also a good branding exercise for businesses, right? And the Gen Zs, as we all know, are extremely passionate about the causes. And sustainability is one such cause. In fact, they choose to give their business to or get employed by organizations whose values resonate with them. And considering the fact that it is estimated by the year 2030, around 30% of the global workforce would be Gen Zs, I think it's a rational choice for businesses to focus on sustainability.
That brings us to the second question. What is being done to deal with this problem? And how can we protect our environment and us, from the excessive consumption and waste?
Yeah, the simple and the difficult answer is that we reduce consumption, right? But I think a good second option is to focus on what we call circular economy. Now, I think you introduced me to circular economy many years ago, so why don't you talk to us about it?
Circular economy involves moving away from the linear take, make, and waste approach to a more circular approach. And at the heart of it is design. Design that eliminates waste and pollution, that circulates materials and products at their highest possible value, and that regenerates nature. Let's take the simple example of a phone that is designed to be modular, which means that each part of it can be taken out and replaced or repaired, thus prolonging the use of that device, the phone. Now, imagine if this business also had strong reverse logistics in place that allows the user to drop off his phone easily somewhere, from where it goes to a factory for recycling, remanufacturing, or refurbishing. So, in this case, end-of-life management is not just an afterthought. It's integrated in the product design.
Right. One thing that I'd like to add to, as we're talking about circular economy is the concept of the 9 R's, the alphabet R. And there is a hierarchical order to them. On top you have R for refuse, which is your most preferred strategy. An example of this would be complete elimination of the use of, let's say, single-use plastic packaging for an edible product or a food item. Somewhere in the middle of this hierarchy, you have measures such as repair, right? And recycling, which we all get so excited about, actually is right at the very bottom of this hierarchy. And that's because, recycling consumes resources, right, including energy. It cannot go on forever. And also, a lot of times it results in downcycling.
So I think another important lever is the environmental policy of extended producer responsibility, which is commonly referred to as EPR. Mm-hmm. So EPR basically means that the producer is, his responsibility doesn't really stop at the point when the product hits the store shelves. It extends to the post-consumer stage as well. Mm-hmm. So once, the product, for example, a shampoo bottle, once it has been consumed by the user and its packaging has been discarded, then as the producer of that shampoo, I'm responsible for the safe and environmental friendly management of the packaging waste, in this case, the empty bottle. This is basically, an application of the polluter pays principle, in which the polluter, in this case the producer, is responsible for the costs of minimizing and mitigating the pollution that they introduce into the system. And in India, the plastic waste management rules enforce EPR in the context of plastics.
Using innovative business models is another approach. Shared economy is one such innovative business model. I think a good analogy is that of a library, where we can go borrow books, read them, and then return them. Product as a service is being increasingly used as an innovative business model, which is actually very useful as we think of measures around sustainability. I'm looking at my watch now, and although I'm enjoying the conversation, I think we are about to run out of time. So
that's true, Abhi, but can we just touch upon this a little bit? If you had 2 minutes to say something about it, what would you say? Would you continue trying to downsize your life for the better of the environment?
I think so. I think I will keep doing that. I understand that when we talk about things on the scale like we have been, like billions of kilograms or billions of rupees and dollars and continents and countries, it all seems extremely daunting. But the truth is that the net impact will always be the cumulative effect of a lot of different actions being taken at multiple levels. So it's totally doable.
I would agree with that. As a consumer, Am I mindful in my consumption and aware of its impacts? Do I make informed choices based on that awareness? Am I being impulsive in my buys? You know, I have started keeping items in my online shopping cart and leaving them there for sometimes weeks and even months. And I go back to see if I still have a need for it. For example, I have this Dutch oven for baking, which has been lying in my online shopping cart for 3 months now. So, this approach has, I think, helped me to understand, or rather to separate what I really need from what is merely an impulse.
Yeah.
So, businesses, voting citizens, leaders of businesses, part of governing bodies, we have a role to play in all these capacities.
That's right. As an employee, I can choose to, for example, work for organizations whose social and environmental missions and activities resonate with me. As a voting citizen, I can vote for those whose policies around sustainability make sense to me. As a leader within businesses, I can be the kind of leader who pushes for sustainability measures. I can work for international organizations or local NGOs to further these causes. Or I could even, join politics and, make a push for sustainability.
But really, the first step is being aware of our environmental and social impact. And hopefully, with this awareness, we can take the kind of decisions and actions that you just talked about.
True. But then, would you say that with that, the cab has reached its destination for today?
I think so. With that, quick request for our listeners. If there's anything we talked about today that you would like to add to, please write to us and tell us. Our email ID is TheCabEffect@gmail.com.
With that, I think it's time to say goodbye to you and to everyone else. We'll be back again soon with another episode.
Until then, take care, everyone.